So we have with us today Katie McDowell. Katie's a senior at Olentangy. Played for me when she was a young soccer player at Classics Eagles, and then played at Barcelona when we became Barcelona, and then came over when we started Polaris. So I've been able to see you play since you were a pretty young kid, real young kid. So thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I just want to kind of have a conversation about soccer and what it was like when you were growing up and what you remember from when you were younger. And Syl's going to help us out there with the camera. She's going to bounce back and forth, and whenever I forget what I was supposed to say, she's going to jump in and say something.
Yes.
So, but I want you to jump in and comment whenever and ask questions too when they pop up, because my questions can get boring sometimes. But I have known you for a long time. Were you 12, I think, when I started coaching you, or was it younger?
I thought I was like 8.
Yeah, I think there was this I think we had we had a pool of players that you were a part of for sure that started definitely before that. And so we were coaching a couple different teams. I remember playing against you a couple times, and then having you on the team. So, what do you remember? Like, what are the things that really stand out and how you remember your youth career?
I mostly remember just the team bonding experiences and going to tournaments and being with our team. And I remember, it was just always fun. I remember I wasn't always stressed or nervous. It was just happy to be there.
That was a fun group.
Yeah.
The kids you played with growing up were fun. I remember, for some reason, I remember one of the hotel stays, and you and a bunch of kids from the team were writing things and sliding them under. You found out what room I was in, and you're sliding things under the door and knocking on the door and running, which it's an old classic to do the coaches, but you're hitting the door and running and sliding those in. And I, for some reason, I remember going out in the parking lot and teaching you how to unlock a car. You can be further away if you put the thing up to your chin. I don't know why that stands out, but so I thought that was kind of fun. And I remember that one of the mothers of one of the players on the team the next day, she said, "Hey, Brandon, I just want you to know my daughter was not a part of all that. She wasn't doing that kind of stuff." And I remember being sad, and I was like, "Why?" It's they had so much fun last night.
That sounds like it.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you remember those moments as fun and team bonding and all that kind of stuff. Do you remember much about as a player, what you were? Do you remember things we would do in training? Do you remember activities and that stuff?
Not really. I remember our team wasn't the best, and we had to defend a lot, so we'd work on defending, but
maybe why you became such a good defender.
Yeah.
Well, you had a unique experience though too, because that Classics Eagles that time was huge, and they were putting together 4 or 5 teams in an age group sometimes. You started where and moved your way up to what?
So I started on Gold 1, which was the 7th team.
7th team.
Yeah. And then I think every year I went Black 2, which was the 6th. I just moved up slowly, but every year it got better. And then I also moved up with my best friend Claire, and we'd move up together. We started when we were 8, and we've been on the same team ever since. And now we're U18, so.
Yeah,
It's a long time.
Yeah, I think potentially you and Claire, I think I've actually coached in my life longer than I coached my own kids. Kenzie's a little different now after 4 years of college, but definitely through youth soccer, because even with Kenzie's teams, I coached her team for a couple years, and then years later, I think for 1 or 2 seasons. So Kenzie might be catching up to you because she's taking a 5th year.
Yes.
Yeah, and obviously Claire was in that group, and I always thought that was funny because I always rated you guys as better players. Obviously, whenever I had the chance, I moved you guys up, but you went from the 7th team and then how'd it go? That was at U8?
Yeah.
So then by U9, was it every year a promotion? Or?
I think there were a couple years where I stayed on the same team, but most of every 2 years at least, I was moved up a team and then just kept going. But
Did you go from 7th to 5th to or did you go 7, 6, 5?
I think I went 7, 6, 5, 4.
That's
yeah.
amazing. So, a lot of kids, I think, and this is what I always wanted as a coach and a director, for people to understand that's common and that's normal. But I think a lot of people don't give it a chance to develop, and they go, "Oh, I could be on the 3rd team over here, on the 1st team at another community," or they give it up and they say, "Well, if I made the 1st team in lacrosse, in the 7th team in soccer, I'm obviously better." That's not really the way it is. Why did you stay with it?
I mostly stayed with it because I had a lot of friends on the team, but also I just had fun with it and I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed my team so much that it didn't matter what team I was on.
Yeah.
It just, yeah.
Yeah, as I said, you had a fun group, really fun group. Um, but both of you kind of mentioned how important it was that you were enjoying what you were doing and not really thinking about the team you were on, and you're having trouble remembering which team it was you were on.
Right.
So obviously that thing's really important. When did winning become, was it ever a big thing for you? Or are you like naturally super competitive, or you just, what is your thought? Like, when did winning become important?
I feel like it became important more during my like middle school, like 6th, 7th. I mean, it was important, but it also wasn't the most important thing, I think. Like, I think nowadays it's like, in high school especially, it's like you have to win. But when I was younger, it was like, if you won, it was super exciting, but also it wasn't like a big deal.
Yeah. How are you now? Is this your senior year? So you're like, we got to win everything. Is
Yeah.
it different than it was even just last year?
I think it was, okay, so we've had a new coach junior and senior year, and I think he's very much about winning, whereas our old coach was very much about like working hard and then winning will come after. Mm-hmm. And so I think now winning's just more important just because of our coaching wise, but I'm all about winning, but I also think that losing, you can learn a lot from it. And so I don't think you have to win every game in order to be the best team.
Even though So do you even remember like who would have been around you?
If I'm being honest, I don't even remember if I was center back or outside back.
That was interesting because I saw you were a center back in the back here, and I have been obviously using you as you got older as an outside back. So, and then center back when I need a favor.
Yeah.
So, you prefer to play on the outside?
Yeah, definitely.
You're so good in the center, though. Why do you like the outside better?
Because the center, I just can't. I like getting up the field, and center's just hard because you're the last or like you're really the last line, so it's hard to get up and dribble the ball. And I also like making runs up to the side.
You like running, don't you?
Yeah.
You just run and run and run and run.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a few wins in here, so that was pretty good. But yeah, you were a center back most of the time here, which is really interesting because I had forgotten that.
Yeah.
So when I look back, so you had some fun experiences along the way too. It's interesting hearing you talk about how winning became this kind of after, it's something that came after the hard work and all that kind of stuff, because with the exception of maybe some earlier experiences, you've won a lot. Your club team wins a lot of games. Your high school team was it your freshman year you made the state final in high school?
Sophomore year. Yeah.
So, and how did that compare to COVID? That was right going into COVID, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 2020, so it was like
we were in it.
Yeah.
In it. I remember watching the game. What was that like playing at the old, now historic Crew Stadium?
It was pretty amazing. I mean, I was so nervous just looking at how big the field was compared to like a normal field and all the people, but it was definitely one of the most memorable experiences I've ever had.
Yeah, you guys you played a really good team that day and had a little tough result. There's a couple times I thought you guys were back in it. But that's always interesting to me too, because you never look nervous to me when you play. You always play really hard. You do what you need to do. You're always working. I've never seen you give up on an individual moment or an entire game at any point. I never would have guessed that you felt too nervous. Were you nervous that night?
Yes, I was so nervous.
Really?
Yeah. And it didn't help because our coach at halftime was telling us that it was the whole defense's fault.
Oh, no.
Oh, gosh.
So you were playing Walsh?
We were playing Strongsville.
Strongsville.
Yeah.
So, when that game, you could understand if someone said you were nervous during that game. That makes sense, right? What do you typically before a game? Like you have a game coming up, like you're playing tonight. Those are scrimmages, right?
Yeah.
When's your first game?
Next Friday against Liberty.
Liberty.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah.
Are you nervous about that game?
Not yet. I'll get nervous like the morning of.
Really?
And then, but once I'm like on the field, it goes away. Mm-hmm. But definitely, I have pregame nerves.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Was that like? So were you ever nervous about games?
All the time.
Really?
All the time, yes.
And then what happened once the whistle blew? You kind of forgot about it?
I would still be nervous. I think it would take me the first 5 minutes or so, or what a lot of the girls would say, whenever they would touch the ball first. Like that's when they were like, okay, I need to get the ball, and then once I have it for the first time, then I'm good.
Yeah.
So sometimes it would be that way. Other times it would be like, all right, well, we've been here before, we've done this. Thankfully, we're at home. That always helps. So sometimes the atmosphere, kind of depending on where you're at, if you're home away.
I was gonna say you have a specific game in mind. Right?
I mean, yeah. So, but yes, I would always have nerves, and I think that's a good thing, honestly. I mean, it shows that you care.
Yeah.
You know, that's the big thing, and shows that you're excited about something. You know, excited nerves, and so if you're not nervous, then some people are not, and that's great for them.
But actually, it's your body's reaction too, though, of getting ready to fight, getting ready to battle, and
Yes.
play and that kind of stuff. So I remember I would sit in class on days I had games, and I would yawn like crazy. And I thought that was really odd. And when I found out more about it, it was my body taking in oxygen because I knew I had a game later. It was a strange thing that I learned. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe it was just a boring class. I don't know.
Makes sense,
But
though.
it was a good class. The one I'm thinking about was a good class. So. But so you kind of get a little nervous. Do you have that same thing, like where you get a first touch on the ball and then you're kind of good?
Yeah, it takes. I'd say the same thing.
Yeah,
like after a couple touches, it's like it settles in.
I've never heard of that idea. That's kind of interesting to
Really?
me. But I feel like I probably played that way because I would get this kind of like anxiety too.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I felt I was okay. But it also tells me a lot as a coach how quickly someone can get negative in a game and frustrated.
Yeah.
So if we're kind of counting, especially in your mind, if you're like, I gotta get those first couple good touches and they're not, is that what kind of, have you ever felt like you had a day where you just weren't there?
Yeah, a couple times. I just I feel like every time I do something bad, I just keep getting down on myself, and then it just
Do you feel that way?
spirals. I think it's happened like 3 games in high school. where-
Okay. I was going to say, I don't feel like I see that too often. So I feel like I always felt like you were pretty composed, pretty calm. But do you ever get fired up? Do you have an opponent that ticks you off ever?
A couple.
Really?
Like 2 girls.
Do you have people, like specific people?
Yeah.
I'm almost afraid to ask who it is. Was it club or high school?
We played them in both.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, this is someone local. This is someone local.
Oh, man.
This is exciting, actually. As soon as this camera stops rolling, I need to know. I
Yeah.
need to know.
Yeah.
Who it is. So, obviously, our interactions have been mainly club related. What's your looking back at it, what's your favorite club memories?
Ooh, one of my favorite is in Gatlinburg when our whole team went out to lunch, I think. And it was just like we always went out to lunch after games, so it wasn't always the entire team. It just, we split off into our groups sometimes.
This past year? Was this
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Okay.
And just having the entire team be there was like pretty cool.
That's fun. I feel like I know when I was coaching when you were younger, that was a little more common. People
Yeah.
would kind of take kids together, and I would get photos. People would send me photos of the whole team together and stuff, and that was always super fun. But I think you're right. Once you go through that kind of middle school and into high school kind of ages, you start to form little groups and people you're comfortable with. And
Yeah.
especially when you're playing in a club situation because you don't see each other all day at school. You kind of show up. Sometimes people are running to practice right as it goes, and they got to go right after as soon as it ends.
Mm-hmm.
So you do have those situations you don't get to hang out. So I'm really glad you guys did that.
Yeah.
That's good. You've decided though that when high school ends, that'll be it. What's kind of brought you to that decision?
So I've always loved soccer, but I don't know. I've always wanted to go to a really big school with sports.
Yeah.
And I know that'd be really hard and like it'd take up all your time if you played in a big school. And it's just, I've kind of decided that I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
That's all right. That's a healthy decision, and everyone. I would much rather have someone kind of make that decision, kind of on their own terms. And Sil and I talk about this a lot. Is Division III is unique in that you're not paying scholarships for athletes, and once it becomes something that's challenging for them to balance with an internship or class or wedding plans, like we say for some people,
Right.
it becomes a little difficult, and sometimes the decision's made by other people because when you go to college, everyone's kind of the best players
Yeah.
left, and so it's nice when you're making a decision on your own. It broke my heart when I told you that because we were obviously,
really sad.
I think I cried for like 2 days.
Yeah.
But I hope you also know wherever you go, I hope you keep the game with you. If
Yeah.
you're going to a bigger school, you'll have club and intramurals and stuff and things that aren't as time demanding. What are you studying?
I have no idea.
Still don't know?
Still have no
It's
idea.
okay.
It's all right. You got plenty of time.
Yes, you do.
So. All right. So thanks for working the cameras.
Yeah, at least I can do.
Katie, thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good luck tonight.
Thanks.
See ya.